that are tasked with marketing and managing the digital experience. So we're happy to share little pieces of this class and put them out there. And we are also happy to have the help from our partners, Association Analytics, Feather, Open Water, PropFuel, and Ricochet, which are sharing their social accounts to further spread the word. So thank you for everybody that's tuning in. We're going to give you a little bit around today's class, content strategy. So is everybody ready? I'm actually going to stretch out a little bit here. I was frantically trying to get everything prepared for class, and it was a mad dash. So I'm committed to starting class on time, and I appreciate you guys showing up on time too. We're going to take a look back. So we're going to start this content strategy conversation by discussing just kind of the evolution of content in the association industry. And it starts with the traditional association content model. And this is a model that many of you that have been working in the industry for years are going to remember. It used to be that associations created unique content that was specially written just for them, right? Often by our members. It was honed in, it was razor sharp on our profession. It's the issues that our members are facing every day in their profession. When I say our profession, I actually mean our members' profession. So if you're a member of the plumbing association, it was all about plumbing, right? It was vetted. And this is something that's really interesting to me. It used to, your association content used to go through so many reviews, right? There would be editors on staff that would be carefully reviewing for factual correctness and for grammar and style compliance. You would have strategic publication boards that are thinking through exactly what we need to develop over time and setting up thoughtful and paced content calendars. And nothing really got to your members or the public without going through many reviews. It was exclusive. So I mentioned at the beginning, it's unique. It was also, we published just for our association. It was not licensed out in any way. It was good old school. Now I'm going to take just a minute because I'm seeing that I'm going to run out of battery in just a moment. So I'll be right back while you guys chat a little bit. There we go. While you guys chat a little bit about your summer vacations. Time's up. So, and then finally, thoughtful. So we didn't just kind of go for volume. We had a smaller amount of content that was all really high value, right? Because we weren't publishing as much. Maybe you were publishing once a month for a printed journal. This is the old model. It was a leisurely kind of easygoing pace that led to high quality journals. And then the internet happened and things changed, right? So we have now kind of modern needs, and we're going to go through these as one by one just as easily. So instead of unique and thoughtful, now suddenly we're all about expeditious. We're publishing on an almost round-the-clock schedule. And so many of the associations, and those of you in class even today, are doing daily email newsletters. You have to have fresh content every day. You're not on that monthly schedule, you're on a 24-hour schedule. And then after you get accustomed to that, you're moved into this kind of frequent periodic updates during the day. Volume, volume, volume. We throw a lot of content out there that, and we kind of wait to see what the uptake is, and then we double down on the topics that are of interest to our members. So we throw a lot at them and see what sticks. It's independent, meaning we're not going through that vetting process. You can't produce at this volume and this speed if it's going to have lots and lots of review and boards that are involved. It's accessible. And so this is something that's been a big change. Increasingly, that member-only content, we're seeing for some good reasons and some not good reasons, that it's no longer member-only. And it was thoughtful before, it's still relevant to your industry. So this is the big change, right? It was the old way and now the new way. And the challenge is for us that we've got to accommodate this with a variety of processes and staffing. I'm going to pause there for a second. Everybody follow that? We're talking content strategy, old way and new way of content development and content use. I'm thinking you're on it. Okay, so we're going, there we go. Aaron, thanks everybody. I knew you were out there somewhere. So as content strategy is developing, there are at the top level different reasons for us to develop content. And some of them I think you're going to be familiar with, and some of them you're not. And in fact, I made one of these kind of a stumper so that we could talk about it. So we have membership content that's somewhat at odds with our mission content, which is somewhat at odds with our non-dues revenue content. So we're going to talk about these one by one. What is the defining characteristic? Lean into that chat. You guys tell me, what is the defining characteristic of membership content? Membership content. What's the defining characteristic? Value. There we go. Nicole has, and Grant, you guys have that answer I was looking for. It's exclusive to members. It's behind a gate, right? So we have this content that's generally behind a member login. I call it the member gate. Now, some of us also have missions, right? So we have goals to educate the public about topics related to our industry. So how would that be different than membership content? What's the big difference? That mission content, what about it is different from unique? Christy has got it right. I think, Christy, you were the first one to answer so fast. That mission content is freely available. So you can always open to everybody. You can see already that we've got a big challenge, right? We've got a problem because we want to lock it down and then we want to open it up. Now, who can tell me what non-dues content is? That's such a funny label for a type of content. Who's got a guess for what non-dues content is? There we go. So here's some good answers. Sales, stuff we're selling that's not membership, affiliate content, other sources of revenue. So here's what non-dues content means to me. That non-dues content is content that we're monetizing for in different ways. So we might have articles from our journal that we then license out to a database. Maybe you have, like, I worked in the legal industry, so we licensed a lot of our content to Lexis. And so that generated non-dues content. It's another revenue stream. Often it's another distribution process, but it's another way of making that content available and collecting money. So you can see that there's a competition here. We've got membership versus mission versus non-dues objectives. And all of this kind of leads to what I call the current state of content at most associations. And thank you for all of you that are giving me some other ideas for what non-dues content could be. So we've got competing objectives. We've got like a big shift in the way that content is being produced, and it leads to a current situation that I've summarized in this cartoon. Who can tell me what's that cartoon look like? And I did not draw this cartoon. I did color it, but I didn't draw it. What's that a cartoon of? That. It is a train. It is a bullet train. It is a bullet train that has that is in a very special state. Not a physical state, but like an emotional state. What is the state of this bullet train? It is speeding. That's almost what I was looking for. It's hyperspeed, time warp. Those are good. It's getting close. There's one piece around it that I don't think we've got. There's something about trains that we talk about when we're telling stories. When I bring up a story about trains, it's usually what kind of train? Out of control. We have a winner there, Susan, and I'm sorry if somebody else had that winner before you, winning answer before you, but it's a runaway train. And content is like a runaway train at associations today. Like everybody had to change the way they did it. There's like limited controls. There are competing demands. It's this amorphous thing, right? Content. It's not like when we say email, we know what we're talking about. Content, suddenly it's like fuzzy. You talk to your board about content and their eyes glaze over. You talk to your executive director, with apologies to executive directors in the room, their eyes glaze over. It's amorphous, it's hard to manage. And so this leads to the state at most associations where we're just barreling ahead at 1,000 miles an hour and nobody really knows where we're going or how we're managing it. All right. So you need to be involved in this. So you're digital marketers, you need to be involved. And here's why. It's because we are involved in creating interest for our association, and we need quality content. We're responsible for growing membership often. It falls on our shoulders. So we need like exclusive content. I told you about the competing demands. Lots of us are in charge of marketing your events and your conferences. So we need relevant content, right? These are the big three reasons that you care. And actually, you can't succeed without good content, without a good content strategy, without some content rules that help power your objectives, help power that event, help power the event, help power, yeah, my finger's getting cut off, help power that membership, and help power like just general awareness and consideration for your association. So you got a runaway train. It's kind of a bad scenario for you. It's always been a bad scenario for me. We got this runaway bazonkers train going 1,000 miles an hour, churning out content, just spewing it out the windows, right? And it's going everywhere and nobody's in control. And meanwhile, I used to be responsible for driving these businesses, and I didn't have power over that train of content. So what are you going to do? What do you do? Here's what you do. You put together a content strategy. So someday, I'm thinking a good number of you are going to be asked to produce a content strategy. And I'm going back a slide here so you can see me. So the first time I was asked to do this, I started breaking out in a flop sweat. I didn't know what the heck I was going to do. My standard approach is it gets assigned to you and you say, oh, that sounds great. That's no problem. You smile. And then you go back you like walk to the bathroom or you go back into your office. And that's where you have the nervous breakdown. Like, how the heck am I going to do it? And you got content strategy assignments are kind of like one of those scenarios. It's really hard to figure out how to do a content strategy. It's like overwhelming. You go online, you're trying to follow all these best practices and they're all super high level. They really don't provide all that much guidance. So today, I am going to give you guys my Chris Gloede multi-part, I think it's 5 or 6, 6-part steps to 6 parts to a content strategy. If you follow these steps, you will sound like a content expert and you will cover most of what needs to be done for your organization. So here it is. They are 6, in fact. We're going to talk now briefly about each of these topics: content governance, content development, content distribution, content monetization, one of my favorite words. I love just the way that it sounds. It makes you sound so smart. Content access and content analytics. Governance, development, distribution, monetization, access, and analytics. So that's GDDMAA. And here's a special challenge for those of you still in class. GD, what was that again? I'm going to say, can anybody come up with a good acronym for that? Like, is there some clever story or mnemonic device? Governance, development, distribution. So GDDMAA. GDDMAA. So we're going to start with one of the G's. This is content governance. So tell me, while you're thinking about your GDDMAAs, who is in charge of governance today? Who's in charge of content today at your association? Who's the point on content across the whole organization? Who is it? All right. Wow. I saw CEO, and then it just went into a lot of me's. I am, me, minis, me, the CEO. So those of you that are in charge of content, you have my sympathies. Oh, here's somebody who has an interesting answer. Diane says, we hired a content strategist. And Rose has kind of the flip side of what I think is the common answer. So Rose says, too many people are in charge of it. Karen has, I think, what is commonly considered like the right answer. It's a team. And we're going to talk about some of the challenges right now for different governance models. So if you are one person, the big challenge is just that you are one person, often without the authority over all these other areas. So you're in charge of content, but you can't control that publications group. You can't control that education group. You can't control the events team. You can try to persuade them. You can try to influence them, but you don't have that line of command that ensures that there's compliance. And I do see Sharon's answer, and I'm not going to repeat it, but if you're not paying attention to the chat, I think you should take a look at what she has to say. So if you are singularly in control of content, often you don't have the enforcement mechanisms that you need in order to establish a sensible strategy and then adhere to that strategy. So generally we look to pull together representatives, and it's kind of a council that owns this. And that council, that governance council, I know councils are not great for small associations. So small associations, you have to work with what you have available to you. When you get to mid and larger associations, typically we look for councils. That council's in charge of owning the general quality of content across the organization, and building up content development skills and copywriting skills, ensuring compliance with the strategy and the rules that you put in place, watching the performance of content and understanding what's working and what's not. So that could be format, that could be topics, and then Facebook groups, which is not supposed to be on there. So ignore that Facebook groups, and I'm going to ask Tom to have a note to pull that Facebook groups note off of there. That'd be good. So this multi-person contents governance team helps ensure that we've got good quality skills across the organization, compliance and performance. And Nicole's like, yeah, Chris, I was reading ahead. I had no idea what you're talking about with Facebook groups. So I told you it was a little wonky right before class, and that one slipped by me. And Sharon, you mentioned data. I love talking about data, and we are going to get to data in just a little bit. So governance, that's the G. Now we're going to the DDs. Next up, we have content development. So that governance team is also helping set up the processes and infrastructure that helps develop all the content across your organization. And so probably that governance team is going to have representatives from education. And a year ago, if we were talking, actually 2 years ago, if we were talking about this, that education was often delivered in person, but increasingly now that education is delivered digitally. And so you end up with the live broadcasts like what we're doing right now, but you also end up with digital content that's archived and then made available for member use or non-dues revenue sale, or to broadcast broadly to the world to support your mission. So that digital content suddenly from education became much more voluminous and available, and that's important for that governance team to be thinking about. And you have news content, you have research content, advocacy content, profession content. That's a lot like your professional development. I mentioned the plumbers union before. I worked with the plumbers union, so they had a lot of content around just how to run your plumbing business. You know, nobody teaches you these things. So that association knew that their members needed that, and that was everything from like invoicing and what to do when a customer refuses to pay a bill and you need to go to collections, and how to have a good marketing campaign for your business. Well, that's all profession content. And then you have sponsor content. And I think I missed a little joke there with, oh, there we go. There's the GDDMAA, but it's about data. Still, we're on the board with Demarius. Good digital data makes associations act. There we go. So GDDMAA, we are at a D right now. We're moving on to our next D. Remember, it's a little easy to get lost in the weeds. We're talking about the elements of your content strategy. So pretend you've just been told you need to develop and produce a content strategy. So you told your bosses, okay, we need to put together a governance team. We need to understand all of the content that's being developed across our organization. Here are the common sources. And we need to talk about that distribution. How are we sharing the content outside of our organization? So in your content strategy, you will talk about things like webinars and newsletters and events. And of course, at the backbone of so many organizations is our journals and our periodicals and our books. Increasingly, communities. So you may remember Reggie Henry, I believe he mentioned it. It's a story he tells often. He looks to his higher logic community, collaborate. That's ASAE, Reggie Henry. Remember, he was in our first class. He works for ASAE. He is the CTO. He looks to collaborate for content and content ideas. Do you guys remember, everybody, we remember Reggie Henry, right? You remember Reggie, CTO? There we go. You all remember him. So, and how many of you have higher logic that you use for in your infrastructure for communities? There we go. I see Chris is saying, yep, we do. Emily, Stephanie, Kim, hi Kim, Debbie, and more. Okay, so higher logic and communities really took off also in the last couple of years. And those communities were Q&A, short discussions, and then started developing like longer and longer content resources. And in fact, we're going to talk in a minute. We're going to take a detour and I'm going to tell you an interesting story about that. And that content is what Reggie says he looks at to decide where he's going to invest in, like articles for the journals and more. And he specifically called out education events, right? All right, and Nicole's sharing with you a really clever way that she's producing her own content. So how she repurposes content in this post-pandemic or almost post-pandemic world. And then you have social networks where people are also producing or distributing your content. So your content strategy, GDD. Now we're going to say, what's the next letter? Nobody's going to remember the next letter. I think, is it Darius? M is the next letter. You're right. I told you we were taking a detour. And in fact, I set it up and now we're taking a detour. So we're going to still talk about content distribution. So, my background is primarily in membership. So I'm always focused on the content and ensuring that I have the gates in there, because how can I sell membership if there's no value to the membership? If it's freely available, what do people really get with that membership? And so you need to make sure that you understand what's supposed to be gated and what's not. And I'm telling you now, that content strategy needs to be talking about leaks. So you may have a content strategy, but I run into this almost in every association that I consult with. They have leaks. So they have a strategy, and even if it's well articulated, they have leaks that are pulling that content away from the gate or out around the gate. They do webinars and they're not paywall or gated or paywall protected. They're doing podcasts. So, you guys tell me, has anybody been able to successfully do a member-only podcast? I actually think it does not exist. And so since we're on a detour, so many of my conversations around podcasts, they tell me, well, this is a valuable member benefit. And I say, no, it's not a member benefit because anybody can get to it. That is not a member benefit. That's you are doing a podcast broadcast to the world. And I don't have to join your association. So you may think that there's good reasons for your podcast, but don't fool yourself into thinking that that's a member-only benefit. It most certainly is not. And I'll fight you on it. You guys want to throw down? I am like actually anti-podcast, famously, I think. So I have not been swayed that this is a good use of association resources for any project I've been on. And if you don't agree with me, I encourage you to drop me an email and start the battle, or go to our LinkedIn group and start the battle. I am open to being swayed, but it has not happened yet. All right. And then you also have other ways to leak your content. So YouTube and Vimeo. So we don't publish the full class on publicly on Vimeo or YouTube. That's student-only content. LinkedIn groups and Facebook groups. So we also don't share all of this content out. We have a mission to raise the education level. And so we share some of the content, and then we also need to self-fund all of these efforts. So we have to raise money by selling the course. All right, so that's detour for the link. And then I also promised you a little story here about Reggie Henry. So Reggie Henry does collaborate, and that's become an increasingly bigger part of his content strategy at ASAE. And he's added in a nifty new tool that does what we call Federated Search. And the tool specifically that he's building out is called Fuse Search. They specialize in the association industry. So you guys might be interested in just Googling them right now. Here's the cool thing it does. So on his web search, so like on the ASAE website, it will, if it doesn't yet, can't remember, did he tell us it's launched? It will pull, when you search for a term, it'll pull, of course, the content in the search results from the website. But Federated Search also goes and looks at other content sources and pulls it into that results page. So if people are talking about a particular topic and you type in that topic on the ASAE website, you would get the web pages that are written about it, like pretty formal web pages, right? And then you would also get links to conversations in Collaborate that are talking about that same topic. So pretty cool, I think. And I have 2 clients that are hopping into it. And I didn't know about Federated Search 9 months ago. And so this has been a quick learning experience for me. And it's something I think is so sorely needed for us because we're such big content producers. All right, we're now on to the M. I'm going to go back and look at this chat. please make sure you're chatting with everyone because the records only record everyone chats, but I'm going to go back and see what you're saying about podcasts. And Jan or Jan, probably Jan, says librarians know all about federated search. So it's been around a while. I guess it just never hit my radar, but it's been a big eye-opening, like aha type of experience for me personally. And it's just so direly needed as we've been creating like these content pools across so many different areas in our associations. And there's no way for our members to like easily get to all of that. And search becomes kind of that linchpin in the middle. All right. And I'm seeing, yeah, good arguments about podcasts. I'm going to go back and look. Don't you worry. All right. Monetization. I'm all about stories today, so I'm going to tell you another story. We talked about Ted Lasso, one of my favorite TV shows. We're in season 2. You know, I still haven't gotten to it, but I would love to see. I can't wait to start that. There's one other show that's on Apple TV Plus that I really like, and that is Mythic Quest. And there's a guy in Mythic Quest that's in charge of monetization, and he's the villain in the TV show. So it's like this fun game, but the monetization guy comes in. He's like, but we got to make money off of it. I love them. I love the word. And I think it's hilarious that the monetization guy is the villain in this show. And somebody else is like, guys. So also in our LinkedIn group is your list of TV show recommendations. I don't think 1971 was on there, but I will add that to my own personal list. All right, monetization. It's about making money. We got to monetize our content. So in your content strategy, remember we're talking about strategies, you need to think about licensing and advertising, how you're going to run ads, maybe concurrent to the content that you publish, e-commerce opportunities, like literally selling it. A good example, in fact, was at the beginning of this, where I said there's an ASAE PDF that's about content. And so they are monetizing some of the content that they have. And it's super meta because they're monetizing content about content. All right. And then we have membership. Of course, you can put it behind a gate, and similar to membership is subscription. So that's the M. So this is an incredible content strategy you guys are putting together. We have access. You're going to have open access. So I always talk about member paywalls. I call them member gates to make sure it's distinct from e-commerce paywalls. So you can have open content, gated member-only content, and then you can do paywalls in many different ways. You can have it metered, you can have freemium, you can have donation. The models continue to evolve as publishers, it's commercial publishers experiment with those different models. So your content strategy, this is the page, this is the element that I think is so crucial. This is almost where we all start. That's the access. So it's the rare organization that has clear strategies on this. In fact, I was on a call probably 3 hours ago. We're getting ready for this association's website redesign. And I'm writing up that RFP to send out. And we are talking about what the heck, do we need help with our content strategy? And we are really talking specifically about this, the content access, or are we going to ask the agency to do it? Do we know what our access plan rules are? And the association kind of thinks they don't need help. And I kind of think they do need help because they can't articulate it. So this is number 1 on the list. In fact, I should probably change the order of these slides because this is the most important part in your content strategy. What are the rules for what's behind a paywall, what's behind a gate, and what's openly available? You've got to think this through. In fact, you've been tasked with doing that content strategy. Yeah, Christy says, make this slide 1, and I should. Actually, Tom, put that in the notes too. We'll do that next semester. This is the most important part. And by the way, thank you to Tom and Amber, who did such a great job on this slide. Pretty clever with the lock there. Yes, and Emily, we will have to come up with a new acronym. Maybe it'll make it a little easier. Maybe I need to work on that acronym. You remember last week we did PISTER, totally made that up. All right, and then the last A is my favorite A, because you know I'm a data and analytics guy, it's analytics. And here's the thing about content analytics. Everybody goes crazy. They say we need all these details. And I'm like, no, you don't. You just need to understand the broad picture. What kind of content do people want? How are they consuming it? And how are we making money off of that? All right. Whew. So I told you that the state of content at associations is like a runaway train. And now after we've gone through like what it takes to involve a content or create a content strategy, I think you guys understand that there's so much work to be done in it that at most associations, it's actually not a runaway train. It's a little bit of a train wreck. And that's my sense is there's so much to work through. And this is just like the internet era hit our industry right across the face. And we are still 20 years later, 30 years later, struggling through this. But now you guys know the elements. So you might take it in pieces, but you can talk competently about what needs to go into a content strategy. And you can have a sense of where your content your content plans need to be shored up. All right, everyone, and there it is. GDDMAA. And with that, we're going to say goodbye to the people that are joining us online with thanks to our partners, Association Analytics, Feather, Open Water, Prop Fuel, and Ricochet, which have allowed us to broadcast on their channel.